permanent. Storage management, so we have did these all, and we created one partition. So for creating the partition, the command is very simple. We use fdisk command. We use fdisk command with the hard disk name, and then when you press enter you will be into the fdisk command tool, and in that everything whatever you change that will not be permanent until you save it. So there are commands, and now in this fdisk command then the fdisk command will work, other commands will not work. Now for help you can press M, and when you press M command you will get all the options, all the command options which you can run. Not all of the options are useful for the Linux right now, because these are for the other type of Linux also. Now if you want to create a new partition, then what you will do, you will press N for creating the new partition, and when you press N it will say that all primary partitions are in use and adding logical partition 6. Now why it is saying like this? Because I'm doing it in my first hard disk, the hard disk which contains my installation also. So if it is you have created already the partitions, like if you have used the standard partition, remember when you select automatic partitioning style, automatic partitioning in the time of installation, it do what? It will create LVM. It will create LVM partition, and also it will do what? It will use the whole space. It will not leave any space behind. It will not use any space blank. It will use all the space. But what I did when I installed the system, I used this I used to create the partition manually, and when I select manually creating the partition, I created a standard partition. I did not created LVM partition. So that is why, and that I created already three primary partitions. So the three primary partitions I have already created, and one extended partition is also created. In that one extended partition I have already created one logical drive. Remember, because it is using the MBR partitioning style. So in MBR you can create 4 primary, or if you want more than 4 partition, then you can create 3 primary and 1 extended. Total will still be 4, but in extended we can create multiple logical drives. So I did created 3 primary and 1 extended and 1 logical. That means 5 partitions, 4 partitions and 1 logical drive is already created. So when I create new partition in this disk, it says that I'm creating all primaries are created, and I'm creating the number 6. If any option for creating primary or extended will remain, then it will give you the option to create. It will give you the option to choose whether you want to create primary partition or you want to create extended partition. Right now it is not giving me any option. It is creating directly logical drive number 6. Then it says where you want to start. That means we are having a space from here to here. These are in sectors. So it is saying where you want to start. You want to start from the beginning, or you want to start from somewhere in the middle. Like you want to leave some space in the beginning. So I used to start from the beginning, so I select the default one. Default one is already there, and the default is what? The first sector, first available sector. So I selected that, and it says I pressed enter in that, so it says using the default value. The next it says that where you want to end your partition, like how long, how big partition you want. So last sector it is asking you to select. So because we are having this much sectors, and by default this time it is using what? It is using the last sector. That means if I don't give any space, I click enter, it will choose the it will use the whole space. It will not leave any space, and it will choose the whole space. But I don't want the whole remaining space. I want to have a partition of a size. So what I did, I use this. I can have two options. I can give plus, and numbers of sectors I can choose. Sectors will be 512 byte. That means one sector is 512 byte. So for 1 GB, if you want to give 1 GB, then you should have to calculate how many sectors you will be in the 1 GB space. But it is difficult to do that. Then you can do like this, plus size what you want in KB, MB or GB. So I want 1 GB, so I did what, plus 1G. That means I want 1 GB partition, and then it says the 6 number partition, type Linux, and size 1 GB is set. And after that, what I did, I press W to save the changes. If you don't want to save, then you can press Q and exit without saving it. But I want to save it, so I press W and save the partition. Now it says that the partition table is altered, but it is not used. Remember, when you create a new partition of the existing hard disk, then it will not use by default. It will always give you error, because the previous partitions, like I created number 6. The previous partitions are 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They are still in use. So it says that the hard disk is already in use, so I am not able to update the kernel. This new partition must be updated into kernel, and it is not been updated. So for that, it says you have two options: either you restart the system, or you can run this command, part probe and the hard disk name. So it will do what? It will update the new partition table in the kernel, in the operating system. And without doing this, you cannot use this partition. So after creating the partition, what we did, we created the file system. Remember, without file system, you cannot use any partition, any storage device. It needs a file system. So for that, what I did, I used this command mkfs dot. Now here you can decide which partitions, which file system you want to use. By default in our RHEL7, it does not support all the type of file system. It does support FAT, ext, and this XFS. XFS is the default one, and we can select ext 2, 3, and 4 also, and FAT, VFAT. We can create those file systems. We can't create NTFS by default. So I used to select this XFS, and then I mention the partition name, which is under dev sds 6. And then after creating the file system, what I did, after creating the file system, if you want to use it, so we know how the file system work here in Linux. So what I have to do, I have to mount it on a directory. So what I did, I use mount command and the partition name, and then the directory name where I want to mount it. So this way we can mount it, and after mounting it, then whatever you save it in this directory, it will go to this partition, unless that directory is still be under slash, but the data will not go under the slash, it will go under this partition, and we can verify that by using this command. Now if you want to unmount it anytime, then you can unmount it by using umount command. You can use the partition name, or you can use the directory name. So you can use the partition name, or you can use the directory name. Okay, so we did unmount also by using this umount command. Either you can give the partition name, or you can give the directory name. Both will work. Directory, that means the directory which you use to mount the partition. So we can mention directory name also, and we can also mention the partition name. So we did this already. So as we can see here, I mounted on this movie directory, and we can check it by using this ls command. So there is a file, so I created the file also. Now if I unmount this, so I can unmount by using the directory name, and now when I check, it is not showing file. Now not showing file, that means it is not deleted, it is there in the partition, only the mount is not there. So when I mount it again, Now I can see the file again, and we can verify by ds-ht command that this is our partition which is mounted on this with the file system XFS. It is 1 GB and it is this mounted on movie. It is also saying that it is used 33 MB. 33 MB, it is, we have not done anything there, but still it uses some space for the file system. So it is using that space already, and then we have it, and we can use to check with the mount command also by grabbing the SDA, and we can see that SDS6 is mounted on movie, type of the file system is XFS, and these are the other options. Now the options are the default. We have not added any option. These options comes by default. Now whenever you do configure lots of things in the command line of Linux, so most of the time, I told you last time also that most of the time those configurations are not permanent. Now what that means, not permanent? Not permanent, that means we created the partition, it is fixed. We formatted the partition with the file system, that is okay. But when we mounted it with this mount command, this is not permanent, because when our system will restart, it will mount only those partitions which is available in the configuration file for the partitions. So there is a file, there is a configuration file which has the information about which partition is to mount on which directory. So whenever our system starts, when you shut down, when it is restarts, then what? It checks that file. It checks the file to see that which partition is to mount on which directory. That is a table of a file system. So if we want that this partition is always mounted on this directory, so whenever we restart or not, so we have to make it permanent. And for making this permanent, what we have to do, we have to make this partition entry also in that configuration file. So I told you last time also that different configurations are having the different configuration file. So for this partitions, we have a different configuration file which has the information about the partitions. So what we have to do, we have to make this entry, this mount entry into that configuration file. So after mounting partition, we have to make it permanent, or we can say persistent mount. Persistent mount means after restart it should also be available, it should not be unmounted. Persistent mount, that mean mount should be available after reboot. So it should be available after reboot. Otherwise what happen, whenever your system reboots, your partition will be unmounted and then you have to mount it manually every time. Now for doing this, what we have to do, we have to make an entry in the configuration file. So to make it permanent mount, uh, to make a permanent mount, make it a permanent mount, uh, add entry of partition in this file. Under etc has all the configuration file. Under the etc there is a file fs tab. It is, we can also say, file system table. So we have to make an entry in this file to make this partition permanently mount, to make this partition available after reboot also. So first we should open the file. Now whether you can open it by vim, vi, nano, whatever the editor you want, you can use it. I'm using vim, and then fs tab, this to open the file, and after opening it, and add entry. Now how entry you will add? Now that is important, how you will make an entry. So first I will show you the file, that how the entries are there in the file for the other partitions which we have already. So we have some other partitions which is already mounted, which we can see like this. These are the other partitions which is already mounted, like SDA1, SDA2, SDA3, and this one I mounted. So I'm opening the file etc fs tab, and this is how the entry is there. Now it is not it is not showing in place because the line is big. Okay, so what I will do here, I will decrease the font a little. Okay, now everything is in line. So this is how the entries are there, and this is what the previous partitions entries are there here. Now what is these entries are? So first it is showing here the partitions UUID. This is the unique ID of the partition. Now previously it was using the partition name directly. But now it is not using the partition name directly. Now it is using the unique ID of the partition. As you can see, it is not showing Dev SDA1 or SDA2, SDA3, SDA4, SDA5. It is not showing that. It is showing what? It is showing the unique ID. The reason behind this using the unique ID is because name can change, but this ID will not change. Actually, in previous Linux, like before to RHEL 6 or RHEL 5, it was using the hard disk partition names like this, like /dev /SDA2, SDA2, SDA3, just like that. We can still use it, but now it is not using it. It is using the UUID. Why it is using the UUID? Because it is the name can change. Name can change. That means these names of the partitions can change, but the UUID will not change. Now how the name will change? Let's suppose, for example, I'm giving here, I'm creating the partition SDA1, then I create SDA2, then I create Dev SDA4, then I create Dev SDA5, then I create dev sda 6. Now I used to mount these partitions on directories d1, d2, d3, d4, d5. Now when you create the partitions in fdisk command, what happen, it will be numbered like this, and we can mention it here like this partition is mounted on here, like it is saying this uuid is mounted on this directory, this uuid is on this directory, this uuid is on this directory, this uuid is on swap. So just like that I can make an entry like this, like sda1 is on this, sda2 is on this, sda4 5 6 is on these directories. Now these files is not dynamic, it will not change automatically, we make an entry here. Now if you make these partitions as fdisk and I mounted this here in this file, now what happened if I go to the fdisk command again after doing all this, after creating this partition, after mounting them on these directories and making the entry here in this file. Now remember, this file will not change until I will change it. Now what happened if I delete this one partition from the fdisk command? So when you delete, suppose I delete this sda4, so what it will do, the fdisk will do, it will change the name of the partition. Actually what it do, if I delete this sda4, that means what it will do, it will remove this, but it will do what, it will take this one up, that means this sda5 will become sda4 and this sda6 will become sda5. Now there is no sda4 now. Now what, in the file it is still saying, it is saying what, so it will do what, it will change the number in fdisk, it will do what, it will change the number saying dev sda 4, but now the 4 is not actual 4, it was previously 5, but now it is saying 4, and the 5 will become 6, the 6 will become 5. Now the problem will be here in this file, because what, the wrong partition will be mounted on wrong directory, so it can misplaced, and that is why what, now they are not using the partition. I will show you this, like when you delete number 4, so 5 will become number 4 and 6 will become number 5. So if you have made the entry here in this file, then it will be wrong entry here, and the wrong partition will be mounted on wrong directory, because here in this it is saying like that. So you will get a wrong entry, wrong partition mounted on wrong directory. So that is why now they are using what, these, instead of using the name of the partition, now they are using what, uuid. So now they are using uuid instead of the name of the partition. So what it is saying here, the entries are like this, it is the unique ID of the partition, then where it is mounted, the directory name, we can see slash boot and home and then swap. Now swap is not a directory, it is a system file, but still it is mounted on swap system file, so it is showing here. It is not showing, it will not show in df command, it will not show in mount command, but it shows here in the file, because when our system boots, so our system mounts this particular partition for swap on swap file system, swap configuration file. And then what, these are the file system, it is indicating here the file systems. So file systems are XFS for our normal partitions, default, it is the default file system, and this is the swap file system for swap partition. So for swap, the partition is file system is also swap. Now remember, when we give mount command, we saw some default options like read, write and all that. Those options are default and they are coming from this command, defaults. And if you want to add some extra options there, then you can add them here in this place. By giving one comma, you can add one by one, you can add multiple other options. By default, whatever the options we saw there, like read, write, no quota or some like options like that, those options are coming from this default command. So if we want to add any other option, then we can add it here, and I will show you how we will add it and why we will add it. Then these options are for the, like first 0 is for the sequence, like it is showing that how your system will mount which partition first, second. 0 means it is default, the system will manage it. The other one is to say the dump on. Dump on, that means whether the partition dump is on or not on. Now 0 is for default, auto. So by default it is all auto, and we can also make our partition as auto. Now if I want to mount my partition, like I have created SDA6 and I want to make an entry here, then I have to make it here like this, like partition name, then the directory name where I want to mount it, then the file system, then the options default, because right now we are not adding any other option, and then for these things I will add also 00 for the auto, for the default thing. Now for adding our partition here in the file, what we need here is actually we can give the partition name directly. Like if I want to add it, then what I can do, I can directly give dev/sda6, but it is not recommended because the names can change. If in case I delete the number 5 partition, then what, the 6 will become 5, and here it is saying that 6 is mounted on here, and we will get error because the 6 partition is not there. Because I did not deleted the 6, I deleted the number 5, but still the number 6 now becomes 5, and here in the file it is saying that mount number 5 here, and we will now mount number 6 and there is no number 6 partition, so we will get error here. So we don't give a name here, so what we give here, we will give the UUID. So for making an entry in this file, first what I want to get the UUID first. So first I have to get the UUID of this partition, and then I can make the entry here. So then I can copy the UUID here, and then I can make an entry here. So for making an entry here, first I need the UUID. So where I will get the UUID? So for making a mount permanent, for making it the entry in this fstep file, you have to get the UUID first. So for getting the UUID, the command is blkid, and this command shows all the available partitions and their UUIDs. Their UUIDs are like, this is the CD DVD which we have mounted, and this is the UUID of that CD DVD. It is actually date and time. Now these are the other partitions we have: SDA 2, 3, 4, not 4, 5 and 6. Now why we have not 4? Because 4 is the extended one. So we see 1, 2, 3 and 5, 6, and with their file systems also. Now which one we want? So we want this number 6. We want this. So I copy this one, and now I will go to the fstep file, and now I will make an entry. Now these are the default entries, and I am making it the manual entry. Now remember, for making it I can use a comment. so that I will remember that what entry I made and what was the default entry. So I put my comment here that this is my mount. You can write anything, and I'm also making a design. Now remember, the design is not important. I can make any design, but the first hash is important. This first hash says that whatever I am typing here, these all are comment and it should be ignored. Now here I will make an entry. So the UUID which I used, I paste it here, and now here they are not quoted here. You can see they are not quoted, and here it is having a quote, but does not matter. You can leave it, or if you want then you can remove it. So I will make it as the default one. So I remove the quote. Now I will mention the directory name. So the directory name is slash movies, then the file system. So the file system is XFS, and you see the colors, then tab defaults, and you see the colors. If these are not coming in the color, same color, that means you are having a problem, you are making something wrong. And then what? 0 0, and this is how you make your entry. And then I will make a box comment, so anyone who sees this, they will know that this is not default, this one is what made by someone. So this is how we make an entry in this fstep file, and for that we need what we need the UUID. So to make it permanent, mount add entry of the partition in fstep, and what for that we need UUID of partition. So to get UUID, we will run this command blkid. This is to get UUID, and then copy UUID, paste in fstep file. Now open the file to add an entry, and then we'll make an entry like this. And then you will save and quit. Then you save and quit, and then escape and save. Now this one is permanent. Now the partition is already mounted. If you see, it is already mounted. That means it is already mounted. Now that means if I reboot it, then still it will be mounted and it will not unmount. Now for checking this, that it will mount again or not, when I reboot my system, I will not reboot. Remember, I will not reboot. Why? Because it can be a problem if I make any mistake. So remember, to verify this, that is it mounting or not mounting after rebooting, you should not directly reboot your system. So if you reboot your system, then what happened? Maybe, I know I did everything right, but maybe you have did something wrong. Then what happened? Your system will go into grub mode and it will not start. It will not start if you make any mistake in fstep file or making in a partition. So what? So it will go to grub mode and it will not start. So then you have to fix it again, but that is the other thing. Will not start if you make like this. So what you have to do to check it? So I said for checking it, you should restart it, because after restart your system should be the partition should be mounted. But I'm saying should not restart because it can be a problem. So we have to check it. Then what? That means after make it resistance mount, we have to check it. We have to check that it is available after rebooting. Now how we will do that? So for that, what we can do, we can reboot also. Simple. For that we can do what? We can simply reboot our system. But if you have made any mistake, if you have made any mistake, your system will go into grub mode. It is called grub mode. Grub mode is like a troubleshooting mode. So if your system has any problem booting your system, then it will go to grub mode. So if it is not finding a partition properly, then again it can go into grub mode. So you have to then troubleshoot it. So what we will do, we will check it without rebooting. So we will check it, or we should check it so we should check it without rebooting. This is important. You should check it before rebooting. So when you feel like it is okay, then you can reboot it. Otherwise you should not reboot it. So for that, what we do here? So for that, what we do? We will first unmount the partition. For that, first we will do what? First unmount partition. Now first unmount the partition which is we have mounted. For that we will use U mount and the partition name. For our case it is SDS 6. Now after unmounting, we will run After unmount, run mount -a, mount with -a option. Now this will do what? This mount -a will do what? This command will check the fstep file. It will check the fstep file for new entry to refresh the mount table. To refresh the mount table. Now what it will do here, it will check the fstep file for refresh the mount table, like it will check the new entry to refresh the file mount table. Now what it will do exactly is that if any new entry is there, remember, if it is any new entry is there which is, remember, which is not mounted, then it will try to mount it. So if there is an entry, new entry, and it is not mounted, then it will try to mount it, and it will say that if the configuration is right, then it will mount properly, and if the configuration is wrong, you will get the error. So without restarting, you will see the error, what happened and what you have made wrong. Now if any partition, remember, if any partition is mounted, if any partition is already mounted, if any partitions already mounted that not have an entry in that file, not have an entry in the file, it will not change it. That means it will not unmount it. It will not do anything to that partition. So if it is not having an entry in the file, it will not unmount that partitions. That means this command will do what? It will check the fstep file for the new entry, and if any new entry is there and the partition is not mounted, so it will try to mount that partition. But whatever partition is already mounted, whether the partition is having an entry in the file or not, it will not do anything to those partitions. It will not try to unmount those partitions. It will not try to remount those partitions. It will leave those partition as it is. It will only do what? It will only check for the new entry, and if it is there, then it will mount those partition. Now with that, what we will do, we will check our entry, like what configuration we have did in this fstep file. Like if I make a wrong UUID, if I make a mistake of these options or something, if I misspell this default or anything, if I make any wrong thing here, any wrong entry here, then what? At the time of mounting the new entry, it will see the error and it will give you the error, and you will not get the error after reboot. Now remember, if the error remains there in the file and you reboot the system, then what happen? Your system will not restart, it will not start, it will go on to grub mode, because you are having a wrong entry or wrong configuration in the fstep file. So remember to check it before restarting. So whenever you are making a new entry in the fstep file or making a new partition, you have to verify it by using these two options. First, unmount your partition if it is mounted, and then run this command. So run first unmount your partition if it is mounted. If it is not mounted, then it is okay. So if it is mounted, then unmount it, and then what? Run this mount hyphen a command. So it will do what? It will check the partition entry. It will check the entry for the new partitions. So if it is there, if it is any partition, if any new entry is there, then it will mount it. It will try to mount it. Otherwise, what? It will not do anything with the existing mounted partitions. Let's see that now. So I did mounted is already, my partition is already mounted. If I check df-s, so this partition is already mounted. So what I will do, I will unmount it. So you mount dev sda6, and now it is not mounted. We can see there is no sda6 mounted here. And now what? I will run the command mount hyphen a. Now this will refresh the partition table, and if any error is there, then it will show me the error. And if it is not there, then no error. Now you see there is no error. That means my configuration is right and I have not did any mistake. And when I check the partition mounted or not, so we can see the partition is now again mounted. Why it is mounted? Because the entry was there in the file and the partition was not mounted. So it did what? It mounted the partition and there is no error in the file. For example, if we have error, now I will make an error purposely. So I will unmount it again. Now you will see I will make error in the fstep file. Now error means you can have any type of error, wrong UUID, wrong number, or miss something, some number, or add codes one side not other side, wrong name of the directory, wrong name of the file system, or anything like spelling mistakes also. I will make a spelling mistake here like default. So I will do what? I will remove S from it. Now you see here that I remove the S, and now you can see it is not in the color. Like these other options are there, and I can easily understand that okay, this is a mistake here, something is wrong here. But suppose I gave on, I say okay, no, let's see that the color, this VI editor, the important of this VI editor is this, it is in colors, it shows in colors. And if you are working on VI, no colors, so if it is mistake, you don't know that you're making a mistake. But here I know that I'm making a mistake. I see that this default is different than this default. That means there is a problem. But let's see, we make a problem here. Now I save the file. Now partition is not mounted because I unmounted it. We can check by df command and it is not mounted. And now when I run the mount hyphen a command, now you can see there is an error. Now we can see the error. It is saying wrong file system type, bad option, bad super block. It is saying that it could be the problem of wrong file system type, bad option, bad super block on which this partition SDS6, missing the code page or helper program or other error. In some cases useful options is found is in syslog. That means it is saying that if there is a problem and if you are not understanding what is the problem, then the important information you may find in syslog. And in the syslog, you will find it in D message. And this D message, you can go on to tail. Tail means what? You remember tail means last 10 lines. So you can see this on last 10 lines, like recent error. We will see these logs. We will see the logs and how we can manage those logs. Now we know the error because I made the error purposely. So what it did actually, it did not mounted the partition because of the error. And you can see the partition is not mounted and we got the error also. Now remember, if I did not fix the problem, I restart the system, then what? It will go to grub mode. So whenever you do this, I mounted, I created, I mounted, I don't know what is the error, but I made it and then I reboot my system to check, to make it to check it, is it working or not. And then what happened? Your system will go to grub mode. So you should not do that. You should not restart directly. First you should run this mount A option, and then you can see the error. Now I can fix the error because I know what is the error. The error is in this. And this is what? Missing S. And now you can see the color is now same. And then I will save it. And now when I run mount-a, no error, command successfully executed. And when you see the df command, you can see the partition is also mounted. So this is a process of creating the partition and using the partition. So what is the process? The process is very simple. To create any new partition and to use it, you have to follow the process. And what is the process? So first, number one, create the partition with fdisk command. We know how we can do this. Then after creating the partition, we have to update the partition in kernel by using which command? Part probe command. Now after that, what we have to do? We have to create the file system. Remember, I am saying create. Now when you reformat the file system, we reformat the partition, that means you are recreating the file system. Remember, recreating the file system is not deleting the data. Data will always remain on that file system, on that partition. You just recreate the file system. That means you remove the entries of the previous data and you make the entries, you make the table available for the new data. So your partition, your hard disk, your data looks empty, but basically it is not empty unless you format it in 0 level. There is a different kind of formatting comes, it calls 0 level formatting. When you do that, then it will actually removes the data. But unless when you recreate the file system only, that means you're just recreating the file system, you're not deleting the data. And that is why some of the data recovery softwares are there which can recover the data. Remember, you will say like, is it a magic, like if I have deleted the data, if I have formatted the file system, if I have formatted the partition, still I can get the data by these softwares? That is not a magic. It is actually what? It is only what? It is only recovering the data without file system, because you have just recreated the file system, the data is there, and these data recovery softwares do that. Do what? They try to recover it from that. So it is there, and creating and recreating the file system means only formatting the partition means the creating the file system. It is not meaning that deleting the data. So those data recovery softwares don't do magic. They just recover the data from there because the data is still there, and they sometimes can't recover all the data, because sometime after creating, recreating, we format, we add new data and all that, so some of the data may corrupt. So it is not possible like you will get everything after formatting or deleting, but still somehow you can get some of the data. So create the file system by using mkfs dot whatever the file system, let's say xfs I will say. Now after creating the file system, now we can use and we can mount it. Then what? Mount partition on directory to use it. Then number 5 is to make the partition persistent mount, so it will be available after reboot. And for that make partitions entry in /etc/fs tab file. So after that make an entry there in the fs tab file, and then important thing is that verify mount without rebooting. Now remember to verify the mount without rebooting, or verify your fs tab configuration, I can say. I should say fs tab configuration. Verify the fs tab file configuration without rebooting. So without rebooting, do that, should not reboot it. And how you will do that? You will do that by using these options: creating partition, then updating it, making a file system, and verifying it and adding it into the fs tab. And after that verify. So this is how we can create and modify, we can create and use the partition. Now we created the partition in an existing hard disk which is also having the installation, and if you're using that one, that means it is not, it is already created primary and secondary hard disk, primary and extended partition, and I will only always get the option to create the logical drive. Now if I have a new partition, if you have a new hard disk, so you will get the option to create primary, extended or logical. So when you add, or we have created partition in existing hard disk that has or that have already all three primary and one extended partition created. So we got option to only create logical drive. Logical drive. But when you add new hard disk, then you will get option to create primary and extended partitions and also logical drives. So if you attach new hard disk, then you will get the option to create primary or extended and even a logical drive also. Now I will show you that when you have a new hard disk. So now for that, our machine is having only one hard disk. Now I'm going to attach the new hard disk to my system. Now you know how to attach the new hard disk in your system. What you will do? Simple, you will shut down your system, open the case, connect your hard disk, tight your screws, and then connect the SATA cable, power cable, and then close the case and then restart your system. And then you will get your hard disk there. Now if it is a server machine, now server machines are different. So in server machines, sometimes these server machines are like hot swap. They have hot swap configuration. So in a running server you can also change the hard disk, but now in a normal machine you have to shut down the machine to add the new disk. So now I'm going to add the new disk in a system, and then in that we will see how we can create this partition and how we get the option for the primary and extended partitions. So in a virtual machine I'm using VMware. So what I can do, I will add the virtual machine hard disk in this by going to the properties settings of the virtual machine, and here I will select add. Now I can add these virtual devices. I will add this hard disk. Next, what type of hard disk you want, SCSI, SATA, whatever. Recommended is already selected, default SATA, SCSI. So I'll not do anything. Then it is saying, do you want to create a new disk, or do you want to use the existing disk, or you want to use the physical disk for advanced user. Now I can use my physical disk, I can use my virtual disk also, but I don't want to use the physical disk or existing disk I don't have, because I want to do the partition. So I want to create a new disk. So I'm going to select the new virtual disk. Next, and then it is saying what size you want. So let's say I want 60 GB, and it is saying what store disk in a single file. So I want that, I don't want multiple files. And next, and it is saying what was the name you want for the disk. So let's say I want the name will be my disk 1. This will be the disk 1 for me. or no, disk 2, because the disk 1 is the default one. And finish. And okay, now it is added here in this virtual machine. Now to check it, I will use fdisk-l, and here it will show my next disk, but it is not showing here. It is saying only, it is showing only SDA. Now because it is the machine is running, still running, so what I have to do, I have to reboot it to get that other disk. So for that I will run reboot. I will reboot my system to update that new disk. And boot from my local drive. This is my kernel, and it will reboot and it will start very quickly. And now it is ready. Now it is showing those users name here which we have created, but I want to log in as a root, so I will select no listed, not listed, root, and the password. Okay. Now when I run fdisk-l command, now I can see this is the SDA. SDA is my first disk, and in that we have some partitions there. But now I added one more disk, and that is what, SDB, and the size is 60 GB, and there is no partition in that. So now in this disk I will create new partitions. Now remember, in this disk there is no partition is there. So if you want to do that, then again fdisk, and then this time I will give SDB, because I want to create a disk partitions in this new disk. Now when I press enter, it shows me that welcome to the disk. Changes will remain in the memory until you decided to write them. Be careful when you write. Now it is saying one more extra thing here, that the device does not contain a recognized partition table. Now it is not having any partition table because it's a fresh hard disk, like it is just I bought it from the market. Now building a new DOS disk label with the disk identifier this. So because it was not there anything partitioning table or anything, so it is creating the disk DOS label, DOS disk label, and now I can create the partitions. Now when I press M, I can get the help, and for creating the new partition I have N option. So let's see what happens when I press N option. Remember, there is no partition here. We can verify by P command. P is to print the current partition table. So when I print it, we can see there is no partitions available. So what I will do, I will try to create new. So I will press N. Now what it is showing here, it is showing that we have option to create primary and extended, and what, 0 primary, 0 extended, and 4 free. That means we can create only 4 because it is creating what, in MBR. Remember, I have not selected to create MBR or GPT. It is automatically selecting MBR here. Why? I will tell you why. And it is doing what? Because it is selecting MBR partitioning table. So what it is saying you can create only 4 partitions, and you can create primary or you can create extended. Now it is saying what you want to create. You want to create primary or you want to create extended. So P for primary, E for extended, and the default is selected what? P. So I want to create P, whether I press P or not, by default is P. Enter. Now it is saying partition number. So the numbers are available from 1 to 4. You can see the 4 is free, and default it is selecting number 1. So I will go with number 1. Now it is showing that the total space is free from the sector 2048 to this sector. So what do you want to use? You want to use it from the beginning, or you want to use it from somewhere in the middle? So I want to use it from the beginning, so I can go with the default here. Now it says using the default. Now what size you want? So you can give a size in sectors, and you can give a size in MB, GB and KB. So I will give like plus, I want to have a partition of 1 GB, and enter. So now the partition is created. The partition is created by 1 GB. Now if I press P, now I can verify that SDB1 is already created, and you can see it is creating what? By default it is creating always Linux type 83. I want to create new partition again, so enter. Again it is saying now you can create primary or extended. Why? Because 1 primary is created and 0 extended is there, but 3 is still available. Now again it is saying what? By default it is saying what? P. So I say okay, go with P. Now it is saying you're having a remaining number from 2 to 4. Default is 2. So what do you want? So I'll go with 2. From the default beginning, and for the ending I will use 1 GB. So I created one more 1 GB partition. That means I created 2 partitions. Again you can see both are what? Linux 83. Size are same. 1 GB. Now again I will create new. Now again it is saying what? You can create primary or extended, and these are 2 primaries are already created, and you are remaining with only 2 partitions. Like you can only create now 2 partitions. Default is what? P. So I say okay, I'll go with P. Now we have number only 3 and 4, and default is what? 3. So I'll go with 3. So I will go with the default beginning, and here I will give 1 GB so that I get 1 GB partition. So I get 1 GB partition. When I press P, I can see I created 3 partitions. Remember, all 3 is primary, and all type is what? 83 normal Linux. Now if I select N for new partition, now what it is saying here, again I can create primary or extended, both, because I have one remaining option. 3 primary is created and 0 extended. Extended is remaining, and I can create what? 1 only partition. So I can go with 1 primary, or I can go with 1 extended. Now here what it is doing, by default it is giving what? E option. Now why it is giving me E option? Because there is a space remaining, and 3 primary I have already created. Now if I create the 4th one as a primary, then the remaining space will be useless. I cannot use those space. So it is giving me by default option extended. So by default it do what? After 3 primary, automatically it creates the extended one. But I will go for manually primary, and I will say I want to create primary. Now it is giving me directly the option number 4, because we have only 1 remaining. So beginning I use default plus 1 GB. Now what that means is I created 4 primary partitions of 1 GB. Now remember, I have a space of 60 GB, and I created only 4 partitions of 4 GB. So I have a remaining space of 56 GB remaining. 56 GB is already there. I can use V to check it, and it is saying that you have some space remaining. These are in sectors. Now I want to use those space and I want to create another partition, and now it is saying what, if you want to create more than 4 partitions, you must replace a primary partition with an extended partition first, because you can create only 4 primary partitions, and if you want more than 4, then you have to use extended one. Extended's job is the only job to give you option to create more partitions. Simple. To create logical drives, you can't use extended, it is only for creating the logical drives. So what I will do, I will delete one. So I press D to delete. Now it is saying which partition you want to delete. So we have 1 2 4. What do you want to delete? It by default it is saying 4, so I will say okay, I want to delete number 4. Number 4 is deleted. So when you check, now we have 3 primary. Now what I will do, new. Now this time I will select extended, and default for the beginning. Now for the ending, I will not use 1 GB 2 GB because the remaining space will not be used, so I'm going to use the whole remaining space. So I will go with the default because I have remaining space from here to here, and the last one is the default. So if I leave any space, there is no use for that, so I'll go with this all, and that is what, 57 GB almost. So now when I press P, now I can see the 3 primary partitions and 1 extended partition. And now when I press new, and that is what happened when we created the partitions in existing disk SDA1, it directly gives me option that all primary partitions are in use and you are going to have the logical partition number 5, default plus 1 GB, and this is what the logical drive. And again you can see it is the 83 normal Linux partition. New, I want again it is giving directly logical, and I can create now multiple logical drives. You can see second logical drive, I can create multiple logical drives, and they are all creating inside the extended one. They are not getting the space from other side, they are getting the space in from the extended. I can create one more. Now remember I said if you want to create another type of partition, like you want to create NTFS, now it is not giving you option to create NTFS directly. It is already creating only what, Linux 83. So suppose I want to create NTFS, you can check the list. For NTFS, this is the ID. So it does not give you directly option to create this NTFS or any other partition. First you create the partition with this normal 83, and then you can change the ID by using this T option. So suppose I want to change this number 5, number 6 as a NTFS. So what I will do, I will press T. Now it is saying you are having a partitions from 1 to 8. Now which partition you want to change the ID? So I say I want to change the ID for number 6. Now it is saying what hexadecimal code you want. So we saw that number was 7 for NTFS, but if you are not remember that, then you can still list. You can still list by giving L option, and the option was number 7. So I want number 7. So what I will do, I will press number 7 and enter. So it changes the partition to Linux to NTFS, and that is what you can see now. This number 6 is now NTFS. Now it is only a raw partition. Remember, it is a raw partition. It is not having any file system. So if I want to use this NTFS, then after creating it, I have to save it and exit, and then I have to create the file system. And for that, I have to update my kernel and add the binaries for creating the file system or managing the file system. And that is what not available in by default in this RHEL 7. It is available in Ubuntu, but it is not here. So you have to update your kernel in that so that it can support the NTFS. By default, it is not there in RHEL 7. Now you remember I told you that why we are using the UUIDs, because the numbers can change. These names, the names can change. Like this is the name of the partition, and it can change when you delete some partition, but the UUID will never change. Now for example, you see here the NTFS partition is having a number 6. The name of the partition is SDS 6. Now see what happens if I delete this SDB 5. Remember, our NTFS partition name is SDB 6. Now I am deleting number 5. Now I deleted number 5. Remember, I deleted number 5, and our SDB partition name is SDB 6. And remember, if I made this entry in the fstep file that SDB 6 is mounted on directory 4, it is already made it. Now what happened to this name? Now what is the NTFS partition now? What is the name of the partition? It is now number 5. That means SDB 5. We deleted the SDB 5. So what happened? When we deleted the SDB 5, this SDB 6 becomes SDB 5. But it is not type, it is still the NTFS. This is the same partition. The same partition name is changed. So only it is changing the name. So when you delete it, so what happened? Your partitions will not, the partition name is changed. So the name of the partition is changed, and if you have already made the entry in the fstep file for that partition name, then what happened? It will get error. And that is why now we use what? UUID instead of the name of the partition. So name can change. It can become from SDB 6 to SDB 5, no matter, but the UUID will remain always same. And that is why we use this UUID in the fstep file. Now one more thing. Now one more thing. Okay, I delete this now. I delete this NTFS also. Number 5. Okay, I will create one more. Now we can see here that we are having 3 primary partitions, and after that we have one extended, and in that one extended we have 3 logical drives. Now when you see this, like this SDB 3 1 2 3, and when you see SDB 5 6 7, you will not see any difference. If you try to see, there is no difference. All are same. Are they looking like they are primary and they are different? They are logical drives. If you want to find out like which is primary and which is logical, then you will not see any difference here. Both are what? All these 3 partitions are 83. These are also 383. These are also same size. These 3 and these 3 is also having a same size. Now where is the difference? Where is the difference? How you will understand that this partition is a logical drive, and this partition is a logical drive, and this partition is a primary drive. So how you will understand this? So for understanding, remember this one, that always your logical drives will start from number 5. Remember, it will always start from number 5, no matter if you are having only two partitions. That means if you have only two partitions, that means 1 and then direct number 5. So whenever you see any partition which is number 5 in MBR partitioning, that means it is a logical drive. In GPT, no MBR, no primary, no extended, everything is extended and everything is primary. But in MBR partitioning style, if you see SDB5, SDB, SDA, SDA5, SDB5, SD6, whatever after number 5, that means with the from number 5, it always be what? The logical drive. I will show you this. Now to show that, I will delete all the partitions. Now I deleted all the partitions again. Now see what I do. I create new partition. Now this time I will create directly extended. Now remember, I have not created any primary. I am creating the first partition as a extended, and it will go as number 1, and then I will give from start to, suppose I will create with 10 GB. Now you can see this is what SDB1, and it is an extended partition. Now because I have extended partition, I can create logical drives. Now this time when I give an option, now I get option to create, not extended, I get option to create logical drives. And what it is saying here, numbered from 5. So if I create logical now, L, default to plus 1 GB. Now what you see here, what it get? Number 5. That means when you see the partition table, you see what? After 1, directly you see number 5. So logical drives always start from number 5. Number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever, they all will be considered as a logical drive if you are using the MBR partitioning. Now I will delete, or maybe I will quit without saving. So remember, whatever I did till now, nothing will be saved, no partition, no anything. Quit without saving.
Sir,
Now if you added a new disk and you wanted to have a GPT partitioning in that, then what you do? Then it is very easy. Then you can do that by using g disk command. Now remember, this G disk is same as F disk, but it is only for what? GPT partitioning. That means when you use this G disk command, it is like an F disk, and it do what? It help you to create GPT partitioning. And F disk is only for MBR, and that is why when I use F disk to create partition in SDB, second new hard disk, then what it do? It actually creates MBR partitioning, and it allows me to only add what? 3 primary and 1 extended partition. But when you use gdisk command, then it will allow you to add 128 primary partitions, and it is same as the what? It is same, or we can say this.
Mr. Tak, there's something that needs to be corrected.
So this command is same as fdisk command. That means we can use it same as fdisk, like like I will show you, I added this disk and I did not make any partition here in this SDB. I removed everything and I quit without saving anything. Now this is called G disk. The options are same. L to list the current partition table, and for that you have to mention the partitioning hard disk here. Like for example, I'm mentioning SDA. Now it is saying here for SDA, it is saying that MBR it is detected, that is MBR only, no BSD, no APM, and even no GPT. So in this, these partitions are what in MBR. It is still showing the partitions, but they are MBR. So this command will not work. What is it saying here? Found invalid GPT and valid MBR. Converting MBR to GPT format only to show you the partitions. It is not converting anything. It is just converting the output. But if I try to see the new disk, which is FDSDB, now it is saying no, nothing is present, and that means we can create GPT entries. So for that, if I want to create a partition here in this with the GPT partitioning style, then I will use the G disk and the same dev SDB. This is the same way we use in F disk. And now it is saying what? Creating the new GPT entries, and here for help you have to give question mark. So in that you give N, M, and here you give question mark and enter, and the options are same. Almost all the options are same. Like for creating the new partition, you can put N, and again now here it is showing what? You can create 1 to 128 partitions. Default is 1 and all is primary, nothing is there primary and extended. And then he's saying what you want to use for the first sector. I'm going with the default. Then for the end, I'm using 1 GB. And one more thing, it gives you the option to add the file system ID directly, a partition type ID directly. By default it is going for 83. You can directly create NTFS, which is not you can do in the fdisk command. And you can see it is 8300. Now I can add one more partition. I can add actually almost 128 partitions. And I add it. Now again it is saying you want to add any code, like suppose I want to create NTFS. So in fdisk what I have to do, first I have to create it and it will be in 83, and then I convert it into NTFS. But here I can directly create. So here what is the ID? Now IDs are also almost same. They have extra hexadecimal number here. So for NTFS we have not 7, we have actually 0700. It is actually showing the actual hexadecimal number. So 07000 for NTFS. And now you can see I created directly NTFS, which is Microsoft Basic Data Call. So here in this fdisk command, you can do what? You can create a gdisk. You can use to create what? GPT partitioning table, and that you can create 28 partitions. The options are same, everything is same. You can try that, and after creating it, then rest of the process are same. Rest of the process, that means the rest of the process is same, like this. Only this number 1 is changing, then after that the rest of the process is same. So this is a basic thing to create what the partitions and to use the partition. We saw how to use an MBR partitioning style, and also we can create the GPT partitioning style. Now next time we will see what the other thing like LVM and RAID.